He sang about sunshine, mountains, and open country roads, but the man behind those timeless songs lived a life far more complicated and far darker than most of his fans ever imagined. John Denver was celebrated as America's gentle voice of peace and nature. Yet his story ended in one of the most preventable tragedies in music history. What led him from worldwide fame to a shocking fall that no one could have foreseen? Henry John Deutschendorf Jr. was born on December 31, 1943 in Roswell, New Mexico. His father, Captain Henry Dutch Deutschendorf, was a decorated pilot who broke speed records in the B-58 Hustler bomber and was later inducted into the Air Force Hall of Fame. But for young John, growing up in a strict military family was anything but easy. Constant relocations marked his childhood. By the age of 10, he had already lived in Arizona, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Texas. Just when he began to feel settled, it was time to pack up and move again. The endless upheaval left him shy, lonely, and uncertain of himself. Then one gift changed everything. At the age of 11, while living in Tucson, his grandmother handed him a worn 1910 Gibson guitar. For the boy who never felt grounded, that instrument became his anchor. He practiced relentlessly, teaching himself chords and songs, and soon joined the Tucson Boys Chorus, where he learned harmony and stage presence. By high school, John was performing folk songs in small cafes and clubs. For the first time in his life, he found a true sense of belonging. Still, his relationship with his father remained tense. Dutch demanded absolute discipline, while John's gentle nature clashed with that military mindset. Their fragile bond rested on one shared passion: flying. John learned to pilot small planes, and for a while, father and son connected in the skies. But that very passion would later play a devastating role in his fate. John tried to follow a conventional path. He enrolled at Texas Tech University to study architecture, but while classmates focused on blueprints and lectures, John spent his nights with a local folk group, the Alpine Trio. His heart wasn't in architecture, music was pulling him away. By the mid-1960s, he made a bold choice. He left school behind and moved to Los Angeles to chase his dream. There, he was just one of thousands of young hopefuls with a guitar and a dream. But unlike many, he combined talent with persistence. When the Chad Mitchell Trio needed a replacement singer, John auditioned alongside more than 200 others and won the spot. This was his first real break. Touring the country and recording albums with the group forced him to sharpen his voice and stage presence. During those years, he also began writing his own songs. One of them, originally called Babe, I Hate to Go, was later renamed Leaving on a Jet Plane. Though John's own performances didn't get much attention, fate intervened when Peter, Paul, and Mary recorded the song in 1967. Their version soared to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1969. Suddenly, John Denver had credibility. He also realized his last name, Deutschendorf, wasn't built for show business. At the suggestion of friends and inspired by the mountains he loved, he took the name John Denver. It was short, approachable, and soon to be iconic. John's solo career took off in 1971 with the album Poems, Prayers, and Promises. On it was a song that would become his anthem, Take Me Home Country Roads. At first, the song nearly failed. Early recordings were rough and radio stations were hesitant. But with the push of his manager, Jerry Weintraub, it caught fire. By the summer of 1971, it had climbed to #2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and sold over 1 million copies. The song's chorus, Longing for Home, struck a universal chord. Over time, it would become one of the most beloved folk songs ever written, even earning status as one of West Virginia's official state songs. Success built quickly. His 1972 album Rocky Mountain High reached the U.S. Top 10, and the title track, inspired by his love for Colorado, became another classic, later named an official state song of Colorado. But the golden era came in 1974 and 1975. In just 18 months, John Denver achieved something almost no one else has: 4 #1 singles. Sunshine on My Shoulders, Annie's song, written in just 10 minutes for his first wife. Thank God I'm a country boy and I'm sorry. His music ranged from tender ballads to joyous anthems, each carrying his unmistakable warmth. His albums dominated the charts. His greatest hits compilation became RCA's best-selling album of all time, even surpassing Elvis Presley. By the mid-1970s, John Denver wasn't just a musician, he was a cultural icon. With his round glasses, embroidered shirts, and gentle smile, he became the face of a softer, more hopeful America. By the late 1970s, Denver expanded beyond music. He starred in the 1977 film Oh God alongside George Burns. Though he had no acting experience, his natural sincerity made the role believable. The film became a surprise hit, grossing over $50 million. On television, he was everywhere. His Emmy-winning special An Evening with John Denver and a string of variety shows brought him into millions of living rooms around the world. In Europe and the UK, his popularity soared, but behind the smile, cracks were forming. His marriage to Annie Martel, the inspiration for Annie's song, began to collapse under the weight of fame. By 1982, their divorce was bitter and public. Stories surfaced of John's violent temper, including an infamous incident where he cut their marital bed in half with a chainsaw during a fight. Professionally, he faced new challenges too. The music industry was moving towards synthesizers and glossy pop sounds. His folk country style was suddenly seen as outdated. By 1986, RCA, his label for 25 years, dropped him, despite his decades of platinum sales. For a man who once outsold Elvis, it was a crushing blow. For John Denver, flying wasn't just a hobby, it was freedom. Trained by his father, he became a skilled pilot with thousands of hours logged in the air. He often flew himself to concerts, and friends said he seemed most alive in the cockpit. But his love of flying became risky. By the 1990s, Denver faced legal troubles. He was arrested for drunk driving in 1993 and again in 1994 after crashing his Porsche into a tree. These incidents drew the attention of the Federal Aviation Administration. In 1997, his pilot's medical certificate was revoked, grounding him. Still, he continued to fly, ignoring the rules. At the same time, his personal life unraveled further. His second marriage to actress Cassandra Delaney ended in divorce. Reports described him as jealous, controlling, and even abusive. In 1994, he released an autobiography that shocked fans. He admitted to drug use, infidelity, and violent outbursts, confirming what tabloids had whispered for years. In 1997, Denver purchased an experimental aircraft, the Long EZ. It was sleek, fast, and dangerous. Its fuel selector valve was awkwardly positioned behind the pilot's left shoulder, requiring contortions mid-flight to switch tanks. On October 12, 1997, Denver took off from Monterey Peninsula Airport. The weather was perfect. He had performed several practice landings before climbing into the sky one last time. At 5:27 p.m., his final words to air traffic control were, "Do you have it now?" Moments later, the plane pitched upward, then plunged into the Pacific Ocean. Witnesses heard a pop before impact. Denver was killed instantly. Toxicology tests confirmed there were no drugs or alcohol in his system. The NTSB investigation concluded he had run one fuel tank dry and lost control while trying to switch tanks. The flawed design of the aircraft, combined with his unfamiliarity and low fuel, left no chance of recovery. John Denver's music carried messages of hope, peace, and the beauty of nature into millions of homes. But behind the gentle songs was a man torn between light and shadow. His choices, his struggles, and his obsessions ultimately caught up with him. His legacy lives on in Take Me Home, Country Roads, in Annie's Song, in Rocky Mountain High. Songs that still echo decades later. Yet his tragic end remains a sobering reminder of how fragile even the brightest lives can be. Do you still remember the very first John Denver song you ever heard? Share it with us in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories of music's greatest legends.